Have you ever felt like something inside you is silently collapsing, even when everything outside seems fine? That feeling, that quiet weight in the chest, it's not just anxiety, it's the soul trying to scream through the noise. We live in a world where everyone's chasing happiness, freedom, peace, but no one ever tells you that the real prison is your own mind. And while most people are still looking for answers in the external world, one man, long before his time, discovered the truth most. Aren't ready to hear Baruch Spinoza? This isn't a philosophy lecture, this is a wake-up call. Because what Spinoza revealed isn't just intellectual, it's mystical. It's a spiritual key hidden in plain sight. If you've ever felt disconnected from yourself, from others, from the universe, this video is for you. You're not lost. You've just been taught to look in all the wrong places. And today, we're going to bring light into those shadows. You'll discover why your suffering doesn't come from life, but from the way your mind interprets it. Why freedom isn't found in religion, luck, or control, but in deep, raw understanding. We'll unveil what the divine really is, and why your search for meaning may have been hijacked by illusion. You'll finally understand why fear, expectation, and guilt are not flaws, but messages. And once you learn to listen, everything changes. This is your moment, not to escape life, but to finally see it, fully, spiritually, mystically. The insights you're about to receive have the power to shift how you see reality, and how you see yourself within it. So stay until the end, because leaving halfway through would be like waking up from a dream and choosing to go back to sleep. Oh, and one more thing. Most people who watch these videos aren't subscribed. If this already speaks to something deep inside you, don't just watch, join. Subscribe to Celestial Truths and walk with us. This isn't just content, it's remembrance, it's initiation. And your journey is just beginning. There's a silent war that rages within every soul, a battle not against others, not against fate or the cosmos, but against the illusions born in our own minds. Spinoza, with the serenity of an old sage, whispered a truth often ignored. Pain doesn't come from the world, but from the meanings we attach to it. A broken glass doesn't cry, a tree doesn't despair when the storm arrives. Yet humans, gifted and cursed with imagination, turn simple facts into elaborate fears. In the sacred fabric of the universe, where every event has its place, suffering is not embedded in what is, but in what we wish it were. And so, the disciple must learn. Your greatest enemy is not out there. It's the voice in your head that distorts reality, the shadow that whispers dread, the fog that dims your inner clarity. This fog, born of unchecked thoughts and emotional projections, is the root of fear. Spinoza understood that most fear isn't real. It's fantasy dressed as prophecy. We imagine what might go wrong, we replay what already went wrong, and we construct a distorted timeline where terror lives rent-free. But fear is a trickster. It wears the mask of caution, but its true goal is paralysis. The mystica of ancient teachings knew this too, that the mind left untrained becomes a mirror maze where you chase distorted versions of yourself. What Spinoza invites us into is a path of liberation through observation. Just like the alchemist watches the transformation of lead into gold, we must observe our thoughts without believing every single one. And in this stillness, in this clarity, begins the birth of spirituality. Fear, he taught, stems not from facts, but from our refusal to see things as they are. When we demand certainty in a world built on movement, we suffer. When we cling to expectations in a universe that only promises change, we tremble. But once you see the pattern, that fear follows expectation, and expectation distorts. Truth, you reclaim your power. The soul begins to notice that calm isn't the absence of chaos, but the ability to stand still within it. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast ocean. The waves are emotions, the wind is thought, the tide is change. You cannot control the sea, but you can learn to surf. That, in essence, is the mystical foundation of Spinoza's view. Train your inner eye, and the world begins to lose its power over you. There's something profoundly spiritual in realizing that suffering can be optional. It doesn't deny pain, pain exists, but it does offer a portal beyond pain, meaning. When your perception shifts, reality transforms. This is not mere philosophy, it is a lived experience. Every time you stop and breathe before reacting, You access a deeper part of the self. When you journal your fears instead of running from them, you touch a form of spirituality that has nothing to do with dogma. It's a conversation with the self. Dreams become maps. Synchronicities become signposts. And slowly, fear loses its grip. Not because the world became safer, but because you did. Spinoza didn't preach miracles. He offered tools. And the first tool is objectivity, the sacred act of seeing what is, instead of what your wounded mind wants to see. So how do we begin? The path starts not with rituals, but with awareness. Notice the patterns in your thoughts. Trace the emotions back to their origin. Don't rush to control what you feel. Observe it like a constellation revealing its shape in the night sky. Spinoza's path is a mystical return to the natural order, not just the external laws of the universe, but the inner symmetry of the soul. And as the mind calms, a silence emerges. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of alignment. That's where fear dissolves, in clarity, in spirituality, in truth. And from that sacred silence, we move naturally to the next revelation, the realization that freedom doesn't come from faith or passion, but from reason. A new layer of the journey begins now. The seeker often confuses freedom with the mere absence of chains, but Spinoza, quiet like a whisper from the eternal, revealed a deeper truth. True freedom is not granted by belief, nor is it found in emotional ecstasy. It's carved from clarity. When the soul is ruled by passions, it dances to tunes it doesn't choose. Emotions, while sacred, are unstable waters, beautiful but dangerous to build upon. Faith, without discernment, can become another illusion we cling to in desperation. Spinoza pointed to something more grounded, the sacred geometry of reason, a structure that doesn't collapse under the weight of emotional storms. And in that space, where understanding replaces confusion, freedom takes root. Imagine walking through a dense forest blindfolded. Every sound feels like a threat, every shadow a demon. That's what life feels like when lived by impulse, by unexamined emotion. Now imagine removing the blindfold, not because someone told you where to go, but because you learned to see. That's what reason does. It peels back the veil of the unconscious and invites the self to rise. Spinoza didn't ask the seeker to stop feeling, but to feel with awareness. He wasn't against spirituality, but against superstition. And this is where his vision merges with the ancient mystical. Understanding the laws that govern the universe allows the soul to navigate life with precision, purpose, and peace. To many, this sounds cold, as if Spinoza wanted to strip life of meaning, but that's a misunderstanding. He sought not to destroy wonder, but to refine it. Emotions are like wild horses, powerful and majestic, but when left unchecked, they trample the rider. Reason, then, becomes the reins, not to suppress the horse, but to guide it toward purpose. Think of love. Blind love may consume. Conscious love, however, elevates. This is what Spinoza offered, a spirituality that doesn't rely on hope alone, but on deep comprehension. When we understand the inner mechanics of our being, why we feel what we feel, why we react how we react, we're no longer slaves to chaos. We become artisans of meaning. This is where the mystic meets the philosopher. Carl Jung spoke of the individuation process, the integration of the unconscious with the conscious mind. Spinoza's path aligns with this, not by denying the unconscious, but by illuminating it. When we know the origins of our beliefs, when we question the dogmas we inherited, we begin to reclaim our narrative. The universe responds to self-awareness. Synchronicities emerge, patterns unfold. The deeper your understanding, the more aligned your reality becomes. This is mysticism, not based on miracles, but on mastery. And in that sacred mastery, the soul begins to taste freedom, not as escape, but as embodiment, not as fantasy, but as presence. So when emotions try to take over, when faith wavers and noise fills the mind, pause. Ask, do I understand? What's moving me right now? This question is a gateway. It leads inward, where the real liberation begins. Spinoza invites you to replace confusion with clarity, reaction with reflection, fear with structure. That's not cold. That's sacred fire under control. And just as the flame must be contained to warm a home, Our emotional world must be held by reason to illuminate our path. From this understanding, we're now ready to dive into another revelation, one that reconfigures everything. God is not a judge above, but the very nature of existence itself. The ancient soul longed to understand the divine, not through rules, but through presence. Spinoza broke the mold when he declared, God is not a person watching from above. God is the very substance of all that exists. The universe, in its vast, silent elegance, is not governed by morality, but by order. It does not punish the storm for destroying, nor does it reward the flower for blooming. Everything simply is moving in accordance with natural laws. In this, Spinoza offered a radical shift. The divine isn't a throne in the sky. It's the wind, the seed, the silence between heartbeats. And when the seeker grasps this, the chains of fear begin to fall away. Picture the guilt that haunts so many, the constant inner judge whispering that they're never enough, that they've failed, that they'll be punished. This fear, inherited through centuries of distorted teachings, feeds a false spirituality rooted in shame. But Spinoza calls the disciple to something truer. If God is the universe, then every law is already divine. Every reaction, every cause, every effect is sacred. There's no divine court handing out sentences. There's only flow, consequence, balance. This is not cold determinism. It's cosmic poetry, a mystical dance where light and shadow move together, not as enemies, but as partners in the evolution of consciousness. Understanding this opens a door to liberation. You are not born sinful, broken, or lost. You are a manifestation of the same intelligence that shapes galaxies. There's no need to perform for divine approval. Instead, the work becomes internal, to align with the natural rhythm of the universe, to dissolve resistance, to observe without judgment. This is spirituality without chains, a return to essence, to look at a mountain and know that it is divine, to feel grief and not label it as weakness, but as a sacred wave passing through your system. God, then, is not asking for sacrifice, but for presence. This realization softens the heart. No more fear of eternal punishment. No more bargaining for blessings. Only awareness. And with awareness comes responsibility, not imposed by guilt, but chosen through wisdom. If everything is connected, then every action echoes. This is where ethics arise, not from threat, but from understanding. The mystical traditions always knew the divine does not reside in temples or texts, but in the unfolding of life itself. And when the soul aligns with this, when it sees the sacred in the ordinary, the journey becomes one of reunion, not redemption. The universe isn't watching you, it's within you. Let this truth sink in. You don't need to fear the divine. You are of the divine. The breath you take is not borrowed from heaven, it is heaven embodied. Spinoza doesn't strip away the sacred, he expands it. Suddenly, everything becomes holy. The tears, the laughter, the silence, the struggle. To walk through life with this lens is to enter a deeper layer of spirituality, one that doesn't demand belief, but invites perception. And as this perception sharpens, we're led to yet another profound insight. Free will, as we know it, might just be an illusion. What if the choices you believe you made freely were actually echoes of something older, shadows cast by childhood, culture, instincts, or wounds never healed? Spinoza pulled back the curtain and revealed a truth that shakes the very core of human identity. Free will is not what it seems. Every decision is rooted in a chain of causes, stretching back into the universe like constellations aligning long before we were aware. You don't choose your desires, they emerge. You don't select your fears, they're sculpted by memories and impressions, some of which aren't even yours. This isn't hopeless, it's illuminating, because when you finally understand what moves you, you no longer have to be ruled by it. It's not uncommon to feel guilt for choices made in pain or ignorance, but guilt in the mystical sense often clouds insight. Spinoza invites us to step back, to see every action as part of a greater unfolding, every impulse as a thread in the cosmic tapestry. This doesn't mean you're a puppet. It means you're a participant in a complex system of influences. Real spirituality isn't pretending to be in control. It's becoming conscious of the forces at play. Just as the tides don't resist the moon, the soul awakens when it stops resisting its own depth. When you begin to map your inner patterns, you don't become robotic, you become aware, and awareness births freedom. Carl Jung taught us that the unconscious drives most of what we do. Spinoza simply echoed that truth in a different tongue. The person who believes they act freely, while unaware of their inner motives, is more trapped than they know. But the one who observes, truly observes, their triggers, reactions, and emotional currents, begins the journey of individuation. This path is not linear nor easy, but it is real. In the still moments, during dreams, reflections, or in moments of synchronicity, the universe offers clues, not to control you, but to wake you. You were never meant to dominate your nature. You were meant to understand it. The illusion of free will begins to dissolve when you trace each decision back to its root. Did you really choose that job, or were you chasing safety? Was that relationship love, or a reenactment of childhood wounds? These are not just questions, they are sacred keys. To ask them is to open doors to the self, and once those doors are open, you can begin the sacred task of rewriting your story. Not because you have full control, but because you now have full awareness. And awareness is the alchemy of transformation. This is where mystical insight becomes practical. To know your patterns is to soften them. To name your wounds is to begin healing them. In this, you reclaim the only real freedom there is. So the next time you feel regret or shame, ask, what force was really guiding me then? Not to absolve yourself, but to learn. Every shadow hides a source, and once illuminated, it no longer controls you. Spinoza didn't shatter the idea of free will to disempower the soul. He did it to awaken it, to make us see that we are not isolated agents, but sacred expressions of the universe in motion. And from this awareness, we can finally stop blaming ourselves or others and begin accepting. And this acceptance gently prepares us for what comes next, the serenity that blooms when we stop resisting reality and simply let it be. At some point in the soul's journey, a sacred truth emerges. Suffering often arises not from life itself, but from our refusal to let life be what it is. Spinoza whispered what mystics have long known. Serenity is not gifted by the world, but earned through surrender. The universe doesn't change because we want it to. It moves, evolves, decays, transforms, with or without our consent. But when we insist that things shouldn't be the way they are, when we resist the present, we fracture inside. This resistance becomes a tension in the body, a storm in the heart, a fog in the mind. And yet, when we release that grip, when we allow life to simply flow, serenity steps in like sunlight through a crack in the wall. Think of the river. It never argues with the rocks. It flows around them, over them, sometimes beneath them, but it never tries to change them. That is the essence of this teaching. Life throws obstacles not as punishments but as invitations. To resist the stone is to suffer. To dance with it is to grow. Spinoza's philosophy carries that ancient mystical wisdom, that acceptance is not defeat, but alignment. And in that alignment, peace is born. Not the peace of still waters, but the peace of a current moving with grace. This is not passivity, it is active awareness. The choice to stop fighting what is and start responding with clarity. In everyday life, this means learning to witness without reacting. A missed opportunity, a broken heart, a moment of chaos, all become sacred teachers when observed through the lens of understanding. The universe is not punishing you. It's revealing where you're still attached, where you're still idealizing, where you're still dreaming of a version of reality that never existed. And when you finally see that, something shifts. You breathe deeper. You feel space open within. Spirituality here is not about escaping the world, but embracing it as it is. Not as you hoped, not as you feared, as it is. And in that act of acceptance, the soul remembers its place in the cosmic rhythm. Carl Jung said, "What you resist persists." And this isn't just psychology, it's universal law. What you push away gains strength. What you turn toward with presence loses its grip. Acceptance doesn't mean you like everything that happens. It means you stop letting it control you. You stop leaking energy into battles you can't win. Instead, you conserve your inner fire for what can be transformed. Spinoza's gift was this, showing us that understanding reality brings more power than trying to bend it. When you stop asking the world to change, and start asking, how can I meet this moment with awareness, you shift timelines. That's not just growth, that's evolution. And so, serenity becomes a practice, a muscle of the soul. It is exercised in small, quiet moments, choosing not to argue with life, choosing not to resist what's already happened, choosing to breathe when the impulse is to scream. And through these choices, serenity deepens. It is not found in temples or theories, but in how you treat the now. Accepting reality isn't giving up, it's waking up. And in this awakened state, you'll be ready to explore another truth often overlooked, that most of our anguish doesn't come from reality itself, but from the unrealistic expectations we place upon it. There's a silent contract many souls sign without noticing, the belief that life owes them something, that things should unfold according to inner fantasies. Spinoza tears this illusion apart with quiet precision. Anguish, he reveals, isn't born from what is, but from the imagined version of what should have been. We suffer not because someone failed us, but because we expected them to be something they never were. We ache not from events, but from the storylines we created around them. And in that gap, between ideal and real, lives the seed of human torment. The universe, however, never made such promises. It moves by laws, not by wishes. To expect otherwise is to live in conflict with reality. Take a moment and reflect. How many disappointments in your life began with a picture in your head? A love that was supposed to be eternal, a career that should have brought meaning, a person who should have understood. These images, painted by longing and fear, become cages. The soul, caught between what is and what was imagined, begins to decay. Spinoza invites us to step out of that prison, to look at others and ourselves, not through the lens of perfection, but through the truth of limitation. This is not cynicism, it is compassion. When you expect people to be divine, they will always fall short. When you accept that they are human, flawed and evolving, you allow room for grace. That's where spirituality begins. The mystical path has always taught detachment, not as indifference, but as liberation. To let go of the fantasy is to embrace the real. Carl Jung understood this too, that we often project archetypes onto others, seeing not who they are, but who we need them to be. A lover becomes a savior, a mentor becomes a god, and when they fail, as they must, we collapse, not because they betrayed us, but because we built altars to illusions. Spinoza's clarity burns through that fog. He calls you to see the universe as it is, imperfect, sacred, unfolding. And when you accept that even beauty carries cracks, you begin to live with your feet on the earth and your heart still open. So how do we dissolve the anguish? We question the blueprint, not the world's, but ours. Write down your expectations, then ask, are these real, or are they inherited dreams, cultural pressures, survival fantasies? This reflection is a mystical act, a recalibration of your inner compass. And as you peel away each expectation, layer by layer, something wild and sacred emerges. Acceptance. Not passive, but empowering. You stop needing people to be perfect. You stop needing every chapter to have a happy ending. You begin to meet life not with demands, but with curiosity. And in that shift, anguish gives way to peace, the kind of peace only truth can offer. Expectation is a thief of presence. It drags the soul into futures that haven't happened and pasts that never were. To be truly here, now, is the highest form of spirituality. Spinoza's wisdom leads us there, not by offering comfort, but by revealing clarity. And through that clarity, we prepare for the next key, a formula, both mystical and practical, that teaches us how to observe, separate, and accept, the sacred triad that transforms fear into awareness. In a world flooded by uncertainty, Spinoza offered not only philosophy but practice, a path, a formula. While others sought safety in beliefs or rituals, he carved a method rooted in awareness. The formula is simple yet profound. Observe your emotions without judgment, separate facts from fantasies, and accept what cannot be changed while acting on what can. These are not mere steps, they are inner alchemy. This is where spirituality meets discipline, where mysticism stops being abstract and becomes a tool for navigating the raw terrain of life. The soul, once reactive, becomes intentional. And from this intentionality, fear begins to fade like mist before the morning light. Let's begin with observation, the sacred art of witnessing. Emotions are like visitors knocking on the door of the soul. Most people either let them take over or slam the door shut. Spinoza teaches a third way. Open the door, offer them tea, and just listen. Anger, sadness, fear, they all carry messages. But if you judge them too soon, you miss the meaning. Observation without judgment is the foundation of all mystical paths. It's how shamans interpret dreams, how monks sit in silence, how seekers hear the whispers of the universe. You don't need to fix the feeling. You just need to witness it, and in doing so you begin to reclaim your power. The second movement is separation, the mind's ability to discern what is real from what is imagined. This is where most fear lives, not in what's happening, but in what might happen. A glance becomes rejection, a silence becomes doom. But when you pause and ask, "What do I know for sure?" you bring light into the shadow. This practice is deeply spiritual, a return to the clarity of what is, without the noise of projection. The universe rarely screams, it whispers, and when you quiet the mind, you begin to hear the difference between story and truth. This discernment is liberation. Finally, there is acceptance and action, the twin wings of transformation. Acceptance isn't passivity, it's wisdom. You stop wasting energy resisting the unchangeable and redirect it toward what can still be shaped. Spinoza teaches that true strength lies in knowing the boundaries of influence. This is not resignation, it's sacred focus. When you stop fighting the inevitable, you create space for intentional movement. This is spirituality as embodiment. The moment you stop trying to control the tide, you learn how to sail. The moment you release the fantasy of total power, you gain the clarity to use the power you do have. And so this formula becomes a daily ritual, a compass for every moment. Feel the fear, observe it, separate what's real, act where you can. This is not just a tool against anxiety. It's a framework for awakening, a way to walk the path with your eyes open and your heart aligned. It's how the mystical soul survives modern chaos, not by escaping the world, but by decoding it. And as you anchor yourself in this formula, fear transforms. It no longer drives you, it guides you. It becomes a signal, not a sentence. And this prepares you to fully embrace the next revelation, that freedom, real freedom, is internal, unshakable, and entirely self-sustained. Many chase freedom as if it was something to be found outside, in wealth, status, applause, or control. But Spinoza, like a lighthouse in the fog, pointed inward. He showed that true freedom is not granted by the world, but forged within. It is not something you buy, earn, or win. It's something you awaken to. When you no longer depend on the reactions of others, when your peace doesn't rise and fall with external chaos, when your clarity comes from reason and your compass is inner truth, that's when freedom reveals itself. And that freedom, rooted in spirituality, becomes unshakable. Because it's not built on conditions, it's built on consciousness. There's a quiet power in no longer needing the universe to behave the way you want. That doesn't mean you stop acting, dreaming, or building. It means your being isn't at the mercy of what's outside. This is the essence of mystical freedom. Your center holds, even when the world spins. And from that center, your actions become cleaner, wiser, less reactive. You're no longer chasing validation or fearing rejection, because you found something more real, inner alignment. And in that alignment, life becomes more fluid, more poetic, more yours, not controlled, but deeply known. Think of a tree in the storm. Its branches may bend, its leaves may scatter, but its roots remain. Spinoza's idea of freedom is like those roots, grounded in understanding, not in illusions. The one who knows why they feel what they feel, the one who accepts what cannot be changed, the one who sees the patterns behind events, that person becomes free, not from responsibility, but from confusion, not from effort, but from suffering. This is not detachment from life. It's deeper immersion. You engage with the universe not as a victim or a puppet, but as a conscious participant in the great unfolding. And what's more powerful than a soul that knows itself? When your identity is no longer built on fragile things, titles, opinions, outcomes, you become whole. Spinoza taught that the mind guided by reason is the highest good, and when reason is in harmony with the self, and the self in harmony with nature, freedom becomes natural. That is spirituality in its most distilled form, the understanding that you are already enough, already complete, already part of the cosmic rhythm. There's no need to conquer the world to find peace. You simply need to recognize that you are already part of something vast, intelligent, and unfolding perfectly. So if you feel tired of chasing, performing, comparing, then step back, breathe. Remember, you are not broken, you are becoming. Spinoza's voice, echoing through the ages, is an invitation. Stop searching for freedom outside. It has always lived inside you, waiting. And now, with the illusions fading, you are ready to gather the fragments and give shape to the awakening. Now tell me, what part of today's revelations hit you the deepest? Drop it in the comments. Your insights, your questions, even your resistance. This isn't just a video, it's a mirror. And your voice matters in this space of awakening. If this journey stirred something inside you, don't let it fade. Subscribe to Celestial Truths and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next unfolding message the universe has waiting for you. And speaking of what's next, on the screen right now, there's a video that takes you even deeper into this path of mystical awareness and spiritual clarity. Click on it. Your transformation is calling. With reverence and light, Celestial Truths.